From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, here we go. Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. We have a lot to get to. We're going to start with Von Miller having Drew Lock's back. He was asked about it out at his pass rushing summit, asked about the quarterbacks, asked about Aaron Rodgers, kind of where he's at with all of it. And I thought that it was a cool moment for Von because historically Von has had a tendency to be out there on the trail trying to recruit quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins is a great example. So there have been examples of Von Miller doing that. But in this case, he said very publicly that, hey, I'm riding with Drew Lock. I also thought simultaneously, like he could have said riding with Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater, but Drew Lock is the incumbent, so probably the smart move. What did you make of his comments, and do you read into the fact that Von Miller maybe has matured here a little bit and decided not to take into the public domain his recruitment of Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I don't know that he's actively out there recruiting Aaron Rodgers. Von Miller is a guy who's, if he's done recruiting, it's always been done it kind of on the sly, you know? I mean,
except for the Kirk Cousins one.
The Cousins thing was obvious to everybody. They sent Demarius and Von Miller out there. But Von Miller's always been good with media. He's always been publicly supportive of whoever his quarterback is. And so I think he's publicly supporting the guy that, they rode with and the guy who's on their team and who's on the team right now. And I don't think Von's going to comment on guys that aren't on the Broncos right now. I think he's going to say, hey, look, we got these guys that are here. These are my guys. And until it's otherwise, these are my guys. And, he's been supportive. He was supportive of Trevor Siemian, very vocally supportive of Trevor Siemian. And supportive of Paxton Lynch even to a degree, although I think everyone saw through that. I think that's what he's trying to do right now. He's trying to be supportive of a guy that's been torn apart by local media, that's been torn apart by the local fans, and I think he's just trying to stand up for his guy.
This is a tough position, I think, in general for a lot of the players because we can all acknowledge Aaron Rodgers makes you better, right? I mean, right. If Aaron Rodgers comes to Denver, it doesn't matter if you supported Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater or what you thought the quarterbacks could be. Aaron Rodgers is an upgrade. It's just a simple equation right there. It's got to be kind of tough if you're a player asked about this because on one hand, you have to back your guy. On the other hand, acknowledging that he upgrades your team somehow becomes a slight against your guy, which I don't think is completely fair.
Right, and that's the thing. You'll get the people who want to spin these narratives into what they want to spin it into. If he's out there saying this, then it must be anti-that and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes two things can occupy the same space. Sometimes two things can be equally true. And I think in this case, Von is just trying to support his teammates. He's trying to be there. He's a savvy guy. He's been around the league forever, and he's trying to help young guys that are struggling understand sometimes you need support. And Von Miller can probably place himself in those shoes a little bit. Not that he struggled on the field, but Von Miller struggled off the field mightily. In fact, he was well on his way to, smoking himself out of the league, to be honest with you, before DeMarcus Ware came along, a savvy veteran who had been around a while and provided some mentorship. So, I think Von is trying to do what any savvy veteran is out there trying to do, maximize the talent around and be, support them, but also try to find a way to make them better.
You've noticed throughout this entire process, whether it was Deshaun Watson or Aaron Rodgers or any other potential quarterback out there, that there hasn't been a unified message. Every player seems to have their own kind of take and spin on this, which I actually think is kind of good because there's some honesty behind it. Sometimes it feels like when there is the unified message, we all know it's pablum. We all know that the message has been kind of coordinated. Yeah, exactly. Right. But the thing is, Von Miller and what he says has such a big impact on the locker room. Mm-hmm. And so I do wonder if these public comments about Drew Lock in that setting where he was asked very directly about Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. He wasn't asked about Drew Lock. He was asked about Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And I wonder if that will move the needle at all with the locker room. If the locker room will take notice and say, this is, hey, Von Miller is the glue guy. This is the guy that is the face of the franchise. Maybe there's something there.
I think the locker room's going to make their own decisions based on what they see on the field. I don't think that there's going to be any – I don't think that's the thing. I think the coordination comes from the front office. I don't think that comes in the locker room, And I think that these players are all going to make their own individual decisions, and the coaching staff is eventually going to pick their guy and go from there. But I think that Von is just being Von. He's being supportive. He's being out front about it, and, he's riding with the guys that he has. And, he's kind of always been that guy. I hope he always continues to be that guy, whether it's Drew Lock or whether it's Aaron Rodgers or whether it's Teddy Bridgewater.
Now, for what it's worth, because we can talk about Aaron Rodgers, right now you have Mark Murphy's comments about him being a complicated fella. it seems like we're getting closer and closer to a potential resolution here, one way or the other. How close do you think this thing gets to training camp before the Packers make a decision?
I think it gets much closer to training camp. No decision will be made before the 4th of July, I don't believe. Everything that I've been told is after, in July is when they'll really start getting into the weeds on this thing and trying to get it worked out. And that stands as far as I know. Nothing has changed in the last 48 hours or anything on that. So I think that, maybe I need to get a complicated fella line of T-shirts going around here to start wearing around here. But no, I think that the Packers are not in a hurry to make it. It doesn't benefit them to get it resolved right now. I understand people, you don't want the distraction and all that, but there's no benefit to the organization to have it resolved now. If you trade Aaron Rodgers now, that gives him plenty more time with the new playbook, and the draft picks that you're going to get back are probably weaker. So I think the Packers have staked out the position that they're trying to say that if Aaron doesn't want to play here anymore, well, we'll let you sit all year. We'll trade you after the year. Aaron Rodgers is trying to get them to do it before the year, and I think that's where it stands now.
And the leverage point is an interesting one throughout this process because the Packers could just hold on to him and really not have to do anything. And it's interesting, we had Mike Tannenbaum, the former Jets GM, on our radio show last week, and he even said that he could see a scenario where Aaron Rodgers isn't traded until in season. He said even 3-4 weeks into the season, when they really come to a point where they're tired of the distraction, that's when he thinks something might move.
Right, and that makes the most sense tactically from the Packers side of the house. Is to the longer you wait on Rodgers, the less likely he is to have the greatest amount of impact on his new team, and the draft picks that you're going to get back for him are going to be that much better. So from the Packers side of the house and from the Packers organizational side of the house, that's the way you're looking at this.
Okay, when we come back, Broncos mandatory minicamp is happening. We'll give you the latest.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Here are Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Broncos mandatory minicamp is happening out on the practice field. And Ben, I'd like to kind of first start with the differences between OTAs and mandatory minicamp, and then we'll kind of work to a little bit of what they need to accomplish during these 3 days before they take their 6-week break and then come back for training camp. So first of all, just go ahead and define what's the difference in your opinion between OTAs and the mandatory minicamp.
Well, OTA stands for organized team activities, and it's a little bit more. There's more. It's a more relaxed atmosphere. There's a lot more weightlifting, things like that. There are rules about how many hours you can go. It can't be done on the weekend. I think both of them can't be done on the weekends anymore, but can't be done on the weekends. There's some hourly differences in how long you can be out there and how long you can be in the facilities before you got to be out of there. That kind of stuff. Where mandatory minicamp is a lot more like training camp, just truncated. Just 3 days, and so. There's more of a serious nature to mandatory minicamp, a sense of urgency. You're trying to actually get practices in and kind of do that kind of thing. OTAs, weightlifting, being with your buddies, going over film study, all that can count as OTAs. Heck, you can even go on a charity outing as a team, and that can be an organized team activity. So
I find it interesting, too, because prior to this year, at least over the last, 10, 20 years, it was the voluntold practices, right? It was OTAs were not voluntary. The expectation is you were going to be there. So there wasn't generally a lot of difference between OTAs and mandatory minicamp, where this year and way long ago, there was a big difference because OTAs were the voluntary portion where this is the mandatory portion. So guys like Melvin Gordon are going to be out there on the practice field. You're going to see not the guys coming in and out of being here and the coach being like, yeah, they're not here or they are here. And, it's not really up to me whether they're be here or not. This is one where you're expected to be present.
Right, and that's why they call it mandatory minicamp. Yeah. Now I'll tell you, all the people that are in the media right now, it's talked about with these OTAs and missing them and all that. The players actually usually like the OTAs. They like the OTAs because it's relaxed. You're just going and lifting with your buddies. It's really what it is. You go out there and do some 7-on-7. You might have a day or two of 11-on-11, but really it's mostly just weightlifting with your buddies and film study with your buddies and hanging out and that kind of stuff. So I talked to a couple players this week, and they didn't understand, former players, they didn't understand why the new players don't want to do the OTAs anymore, but that's neither here nor there.
It's not like you do pad work anyways.
Yeah, you're not really doing, you're out there in shells and 7 on, it's just not really,
So things are ramped up a little bit here.
Yeah, things will be a little more ramped up. It's going to be a little more, like I said, sense of urgency. You're actually doing some things. And this is one where you want to make a statement, where I don't want to say that OTAs are goof off, but if you make mistakes out there, it's whatever. You make mistakes in in mandatory minicamp, they get magnified. And then on into training camp, then they really get magnified. So this is a 3-day stretch for you if you're a down roster or you're a rookie player to make a splash, make an impression, and keep top-of-mind awareness on the coaches' minds as you head towards training camp.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of those young players here in just a second. But what do the Broncos as a team need to accomplish? What do you like to do? I love the point you made about impression, and especially when we go to the quarterbacks. Like, you want to leave a specific kind of impression in a quarterback battle as you head into this break. If Drew Lock can have a string together a few days of consistent play, start making some elite plays out there, well, that could go a long way for the coaching staff, for the players in the locker room, as they're sort of internally deciding how they feel about the quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that's really a thing. I mean, because there's this long gap in between those 3 days in training camp. And if you show marked improvement over this 3-day stretch, that's the last thing that everybody's going to remember. There's like a cognitive bias there. You're going to remember that. It's a recency bias, right? And so coaches are going to remember, hey, look, you had all this tape last year, but these 3 days, you came in and really showed improvement. We're going to be eyeballing that going into the first week of training camp, and you'll get some confirmation bias when you do the right thing. So you want that top-of-mind awareness coming out of these 3 days.
How about for Teddy Bridgewater, who's new here? We just got done talking about Von Miller. Drew Lock's the incumbent. Didn't mention Teddy Bridgewater as a guy that he's riding with, but I think then part of that is because they just don't have a lot of experience with him just yet. He hasn't had a chance to really make that kind of impression.
If I'm Teddy Bridgewater, I'm playing it safe. Just go out there, play it safe. Just go out there, don't make any turnovers, don't do anything. And I'm either going to default into the job or I'm going to be the backup waiting in the wings if Drew Lock messes up. So if I were using a bit of strategery here,
that word needs to make it into our show more often.
Right, I'd be like Tin Cup and I'd lay up.
Okay. Yeah, well, Tim Cup did not lay up.
No, but I mean, the first guy laid up, the second
yes,
guy.
Of course. Okay, well, I guess that makes...
Like Don Johnson.
Don Johnson, yeah,
right.
Yeah. Don Johnson ended up laying up. It's a good reference
Drew
there.
needs to be Kevin Costner and go long. Go yard.
Yeah, he has
He hits
to.
it.
Well, but again, that's what he's historically done. So it's like it's the combination of doing that, but actually getting it on the green.
It's maybe the single best metaphor I've ever come up with.
I don't think we could top this. What about for the other players? What's important here? You got a little bit of a position battle there at right tackle. You've got running backs that are both vying, even though you've said pretty consistently you think Melvin Gordon is going to be the guy, even though he hasn't been here during OTAs. What are some of the other position battles that could maybe leave an impression during this time?
Well, center, we've talked about.
Yeah.
You want to see Cush come out there looking strong. Now, you don't want to go 100% and get people hurt out here in minicamp, but you'd like to see the improvement. You want to see everybody lined up, know their assignments, know where they're supposed to be, no mental errors, no unforced errors if this were tennis. You just want to go out there and you want to see guys know what they're supposed to do and execute that and build confidence in their ability to be able to do what the plan is and then get better at executing that plan as you go along. So specifically on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to see guys lined up in the right spot, no blown assignments. Right. On the offensive side of the ball, you're going to want to see protection calls. You're going to want to see guys, not leaving somebody unguarded straight back to the red jersey and all that kind of stuff.
Specific guy I'm going to have my eye on that I'd like to see him continue to have a good offseason and into mandatory minicamp, hopefully training camp, is Michael Ojemudia, because he is a guy that was a starter last year for quite a bit of the season, except for the little short time he got benched. And then now this year they made so many additions to the secondary. He's buried down the depth chart, number 5 guy likely. So he's somebody that I'm going to have a keen eye on, because if he can continue to leave that kind of impression, maybe he works into a more regular role in dime. He's going to obviously play some special teams. I think there's some other opportunities for Michael Ojemudia.
Yeah, he's a guy who kind of fell out of favor a little bit last year. Had some busted coverages, trying to learn on the fly with some of this kind of stuff, made some rookie mistakes, and that'll put you in a doghouse. This is a perfect opportunity to come out here and make an impression, remind people, hey, I'm still here. And, oh, by the way, it's only my second year. Look at me improving as I get confidence in this scheme. For a guy like Ojemudia, this could be a big turning point, a pivotal point in his career.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about some more of those young players that can make an impression. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Here are Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. We're talking about mandatory minicamp leading into the inevitable training camp, and we're going to go now to the younger guys. We talked about Michael Ojemudia, who I still consider, if we're going first and second year guys that could make an impression here in mandatory minicamp or even into training camp and maybe earn some more snaps, earn more reps. Give me a couple of guys that you're interested in watching that you think that could maybe move the needle a little bit.
Well, I think both the young rookie safeties and honestly the veteran safety is going to be here. There's 4 guys out here trying out for what's probably 2 spots, maybe 3, and so somebody's going to be the odd man out, whether that's P.J. Locke or Trey Marshall, or whether that's the rookies in Stearns and Johnson. So you're going to have to find a way to stand out. You're going to have to find a way to make those splash plays in probably limited reps, because Justin Simmons and K-Jack are going to be the starters, right? So I think that those guys definitely have a chance to do that. One of the linebackers is going to have a chance to do that. Now, Browning's injured, so he's going to be out. But Sternad, if he can get reps in there, he might be the guy to maybe make an impression that reminds people, hey, I'm still here and I'm trying to take Josie's job. On the offensive side of the ball, we talked about Quinn Meinerz quite a bit. I think it's a legit competition there at center. Tani Moody might make a guy like Graham Glasgow get close to expendable. So, just a couple of guys there. And then this receiver. I mean, it's a loaded receiving core. And you've got a lot of down roster guys vying for probably one spot on that roster. Can you make special teams plays? Can you go out there and make all the catches? Those kinds of things. And so I think that it's going to be tough for a lot of these guys. I really have my eye on that center battle. I've talked about it extensively. The minute Meinerz was drafted, I said he was going to come in here and take somebody's job. I stand by that. So I'm interested to see what he's able to do.
How dare you take my safety? I was going to go with Jamar Johnson. That was like one of my top guys that I was excited to watch. He had an interception in practice recently, and I just think that he has so much talent. He's a ball hawking safety, if you will. I think he's going to show out. So for me, Jamar Johnson's at the top of my list, and then I'd say Javonte Williams are 2 of my top guys. Now I'm cheating a little bit with Javonte Williams. I could even say Pat Surtain would be cheating too, because those are your top 2 picks. But Javonte Williams, I just think that he's really going to have some flash moments. Probably more so in training camp. I don't know what you can really accomplish during mandatory minicamp, especially without pads. But when we get to training camp, I think he's going to have some flash moments. But for me, give me Jamar Johnson. I think he comes away with an interception over the course of mandatory minicamp, at least one. And then you have opportunities there for Pat Surtain. I mean, the thing about Pat Surtain is we have already raised our level of expectation as offseason has moved along. You listen to the way the other guys describe him. You look at him running around out there in the field. You wouldn't think rookie when you're watching him practice even. We're talking about practice, man, not a game. But with that, I don't know. Maybe I've already moved past he's a young guy and he's a rookie and all of that, because I just sort of see a guy that looks more like a vet.
That's the same thing we did with Jerry Jeudy last year after watching him run routes. And I remember you telling me before that draft that Broncos would never draft Alabama players, and now here we are, 2 back-to-back first-round picks out of Alabama, and we're loving what they bring to the team. So, no, I think you're right.
Historically, they hadn't, though. I mean, at that point, I was right until that moment, and then
everybody's right until they're wrong.
That's right.
I think that I just use that to tweak it, but I think that I agree with you, and on Surtain too, because he's got to find his role in this. You're 4 deep in terms of starting corners, and we just talked about Ojemudia as the number 5 corner who needs to make an impression, but we're 4 deep at starting corners, and they're going to have to figure out that rotation and figure out who's what and who's where and how that works. And so Darby, because the money they paid him figures to be in that mix. Fuller and Callahan and Surtain have got to figure it out for the other 2 starting corner spots.
I think it's fun with Surtain as well is he will be playing multiple positions back there. He's going to play on the inside. He's going to play on the outside like we've seen. And that shows, again, a lot of that confidence that the coaching staff already has in it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the size, we've raved about the size out there. He looks more like a linebacker the way he stands out there. But yeah, him getting the work and the experience at all those positions to be able to jump in there and do that, I think that's going to be very beneficial for him. And
a guy that I don't want to forget about, because I don't know where he's going to be necessarily with his hamstring, I want to believe it's KJ Hamler. I think KJ Hamler still has a chance to really do some really impressive things during mandatory minicamp and training camp, and maybe it is more of a training camp kind of thing for him. He might be a guy that shows out in the preseason games. That's where we really get a chance to see. But you've said for a long time, receivers, takes him a couple of years. This would be right around that time that he's taken a step forward.
Generally, year 2. Love to see KJ Hamler pick up some training camp hardware as like most improved, to go with his award for a guy I wouldn't let my sister date universally from the Broncos. If you watch the YouTube, that was their question in the morning the other day. And I think he and Shelby Harris won or lost that one, whatever you go with. But I'd love to see KJ, do all that right now, nursing the hamstring a little bit. It's going to be fine by training camp. Not sure how involved he's going to be all total.
Well, that's the thing about mandatory minicamp in general. You want to take it easy with some of these guys. If it's even a small thing, you just more or less take an opportunity to let them heal up, let them rest up. There's just really no reason to force it. We've seen some teams, even during this time, cancel mandatory minicamps as a result of injuries. The 49ers, the Houston Texans are teams that just said, you're just not going to do mandatory minicamp because we don't want to risk anything more. The 49ers more specifically, because they lost 2 key guys.
Well, and the 49ers were hit with a spate of injuries last year, one of the most injured teams in the league, and so they're trying to be a bit more cautious. They're getting close to perilously thin at the running back position. They've got 2 rookies and Wayne Gallman on top of Mostert, and that's really about it. So, a guy we didn't mention, not a young guy, but Royce Freeman needs to either have a big camp or have a big camp to showcase that he could be somewhere else. So just a name to keep your eye on.
No, that is definitely a guy. He is firmly in the roster bubble conversation. I think that's really well said. All right, there you go. That is our episode of Broncos Country Tonight. Thank you for watching as always.